Hey everyone, it's Falcore here and it's been a long time. So I decided to make a video today because I was a bit bored, to be fair, but also I said that I wanted to make a bit of like a comeback, I suppose. And that doesn't mean I'm going to become a vlogger again, because clearly that lifestyle was not the right choice for me and it never really worked. And it never worked because it never worked. I mean, no one cared, which is fine. Obviously it makes sense that nobody really cared because who am I? I'm just some guy. But for those of you that did watch, and for myself, because I enjoy looking back on my vlogs because they were videos that I made and they like kind of document a lot of a period in my life and I love them for that. And so a period in my life ended and things really changed and I never addressed it. And that was obviously the fact that in all of my old videos in the past, I was with my ex-partner and ex-husband, and that ended and I never explained why. And for some reason, although I know that there's probably although there's only like a handful of people who used to watch my YouTube would have wondered or cared, what was really interesting was that no one really questioned it, no one really like kind of pushed it, which I thought was actually really nice and really expresses, you know, that people are kind and respectful. I never really got to like document or explain why and what happened. And I guess I would like to do that in a way that is like measured, I suppose. Obviously there's things that like happened and the way our relationship ended that, you know, from my perspective, obviously were not ideal. So I was not the instigator of the end of my marriage, which is fine, because obviously somebody has to be the person. I can look back and feel like it was very dramatic, but I think the truth is that it wasn't. Also, I'm very grateful to my ex for ending our relationship because my life is actually much more aligned with, I think, a bit of like authenticity on myself and what I truly want. Maybe even less of what I want, because I think it's hard sometimes to know what you actually want, but more of what I think I need. Knowing what you need, both like mentally and physically, is really difficult to know because, I mean, how do you know that unless you're some sort of like enlightened human being? But I think I've learned to become more intuitive about what I might need now. And there's a lot of things about myself that I now know more of. Circling back, the end of our marriage and our relationship, that happened, and my ex was the instigator of that. And in hindsight, I feel like he thought that the end coming was not a surprise to me because of any like difficulties and challenges in our relationship that we had. But I think the truth for me was that whatever challenges and like kind of difficulties was something that I'd very recently, actually, at the point when he decided to end, I think I'd kind of come to a bit of an acceptance, and anything that maybe didn't feel right or caused me discomfort or a lack of contentment here and there, maybe, without even like making a conscious decision. It wasn't like I woke up one day and said, I am going to accept this now. It was just that I'd kind of actually come to a bit more of a calmer conclusion that this was life now and it was okay, because it was. I don't think we were living in complete misery. I certainly wasn't. Perhaps he was. I don't know. We've not communicated much because, in honesty, I don't know whether he would mind me saying this or not, but he was not willing to have any conversations really after he ended our relationship. It became quite transactional, just kind of like doing the business of like ending a relationship and dissolving a marriage and sharing out our possessions and things like that. We just went very formal with each other. It was probably the right way to go about it. Maybe not the best for my like own self-expression, because I think I'm quite a person who just like, once my emotions want to come out, I let them out, and I never really got the chance to do that. So I think that for a while made me feel a bit like incomplete or like something hadn't been said. But obviously now where I am 6 years later, I am actually married again because I met someone else and we very quickly fell in love. And the reason why that happened, I'm jumping from thing to thing here, this is such a typical me thing to do, but the reason why that happened is because, you know, I was already in my early 30s, my marriage had ended, and I met this other person. My head just went to, well, what have I got to lose? So I may as well just go along with whatever comes along and see where it like kind of goes. And thankfully, it just worked, and I met somebody who was really able to understand and see a part of myself. This sounds really like la-di-da woo-woo, but he definitely was able to see a part of myself that I don't think I really even understood. So my husband now, Ryan, yeah, he just was someone who came into my life unexpectedly, and he just seemed to really get me, and he was able to give me the grace that I needed to still be grieving for the end of my previous relationship and my marriage, whilst understanding that actually I was really into him, and that, you know, a thing was forming between us. So it just sort of like happened, and I went with it. And 6 years later, here we are, and we're married. It sounds like such a thing people say when they've been in a long-term previous relationship, they were married or whatever, and then they get into a relationship with someone else, and then they marry them, and then blah, blah, blah. That people go, I'm so happy now, and I never realized it before. But I can only say that as somebody who feels things extremely deeply, but finds it quite challenging to express that sometimes, is that I actually can say that whilst there are still parts of me and parts of my life that are challenging, of which one thing I will come on to in a moment, but also I have never felt as content and like understood by my partner, but just content in life generally. And there's everything else that happens in life, such as work, stuff that just goes on around you, things that you deal with, bills to pay, blah, 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 all that stuff. That stuff still happens, and that stuff's still there, and that stuff still causes one anxiety, and that's that. But like in terms of like life fulfillment and contentment, I've got more of that than I definitely ever had before. And maybe one could say that's because somewhere cosmically, I don't know, deep down, is that I also did know that something wasn't quite right in that previous relationship. But in any case, I am grateful for that previous relationship. I'm grateful for the experience that we had. And while I spent a little bit of time being quite angry, which I think is normal when a relationship ends, I think I managed to stop being angry a lot quicker than even I thought I would. And actually, I now have just managed to sort of like reframe it, I suppose. And actually, I kind of look back in fondness to a lot of things because, you know, we met when we were young, we went to university together. University was also really great. It was where I grew up, I became an adult, I learned about myself. There was lots of challenges and lots of struggles. No one is perfect, and you've got to learn from life, and you've got to learn from experiences, and you grow into yourself and into your mind, because that's just what happens. It's natural. And I think whilst people do change, they also don't change. Like, you don't change, you learn to accept parts of yourself, and parts of yourself fade or grow, and that's kind of like normal, I think, from just what I'm experiencing in life. But the other thing I was just going to touch on was that there was always a question mark in my previous relationship, within myself and with my ex-husband, that I think we both felt like something else was going on for me. There was always quite a lot of talk and a big question mark around me and my emotional regulation and all sorts of things like that, the way I experienced things, the way I responded to situations and all that sort of stuff. And it's interesting now because I had an experience where I got a job at a place that was supposed to be my dream job. It didn't go as planned, and it turned out to not really be the dream job that it had presented itself as, and that led me to leave that job very quickly, and I sought a bit of like medical intervention for like advice and basically to take some time away from work. And it was that intervention that led to a suggestion of, have you ever considered that you may have ADHD? Because a lot of what I was talking about matched up, mirrored those kind of symptoms, for want of a better word. And I obviously had never even considered that, because what I knew about ADHD was from what narrative was most common when I was at school, which was children with ADHD were badly behaved, disruptive children who got excluded, who had, like, you know, issues, it might have often been expressed as when I was at school. And obviously I was never that child. I was not disruptive. I was painfully shy and quiet. I blended into the background to the point where in the later years of my time at secondary school, I used to sometimes just not be able to deal with a certain lesson, class, subject, whatever. And I would leave the school grounds and I would go and sit in like some woods next to a park in the nearby like village and just like wait out that lesson or wait out the rest of the day and then just go home. And when that like stems from me saying I used to blend into the background, I was so quiet. So I used to do that, and yet I would, like, as far as I can understand, nobody noticed. It was never written into my reports. Like, my lack of attendance was noticed, but it was never flagged or like kind of pulled up upon in a serious way where anyone tried to change it or tried to intervene or tried to like help. I just kind of like, it just happened. I did it. Nobody said anything because clearly nobody cared, because I was just the least important human being. That sounds very dramatic. I don't mean that, but you know what I mean. Like I essentially got away with it when really someone should have been trying to find out where I was. I mean, I was able to just leave the school grounds. No one noticed or cared. I'm rambling on as I always do, but that conversation with my GP, it was actually a nurse practitioner who I had the conversation with. And I remember being a little bit confused by it, but it was her saying that then made me look into it. I did some reading, and a lot of what ADHD, as we now understand it now, which is more than just you're a disruptive child, I was like, a lot of this adds up. So I went down the process of asking to get an assessment. I used a pathway called the right to choose, which you do with the NHS here in England. And the right to choose means that you have the right to choose what provider carries out your assessment. So initially I was on the NHS waiting list, which they said was going to take up to 4 years. And which, to be honest, I was like, I've lived this long in complete obliviousness to this possibility, so it's not any harm. But then somebody explained to me the process of right to choose and that I could still ask for that even after being referred to the NHS, and I was already on that waiting list. So I did that. My GP didn't question it. It was absolutely fine because that is a process that we have. I chose a organisation called Problem Shared, a professional organisation who assess and diagnose and support people with ADHD and autism. So yeah, I got referred to them, and the waiting list went from 4 years to, let's work this out, I got referred on that in the March of 2025, and I had my assessment in October 2025. And shocker, I have combined ADHD. And through everything that I discussed, I had lots of conversations with my parents about my childhood. I looked through all of my school reports from when I was like at infant school, junior school, secondary school, which a lot of that was much more vague and generic because I was never there. But also they just didn't seem to even know who I was. But yeah, I really worked hard to reflect and to look back and to make sense of things. And I spoke all of this through with the assessor, who was a lovely psychotherapist. I think that's what you call them. Please forgive my ignorance. It was a quick decision at the end, because I know that sometimes they say that they might want to go away and like discuss your situation with kind of colleagues to make a firm decision. But after we went through everything, we spoke about my childhood, we spoke about my previous relationship experiences, we spoke about my experience at university, in the world of work, in my current life now, and they were like of a solid, you have met all this criteria that you are combined ADHD, which means I am both the inattentive and like hyperactive, essentially. So I've got strong traits of both. It was a really strange experience because in a sense it felt to me like it all happened very fast. It might sound a bit convenient, but the diagnosis really does answer a lot of questions about myself that I've had for so long, that has really made a lot of things just make sense, in that I've always had this issue with esteem because of the way I experience things. And I always was kind of this opinion of that I was just a bit of a crap human. I wasn't good at dealing with life and experiencing the world. But obviously the truth is that my brain just functions the way that it actually does. I battle dysregulated emotions, motivation issues, focus issues because of, the chemicals and everything happening in my brain. A lot of it I'm still not even 100% sure I understand. I've had some what was called psychoeducation after the diagnosis, and a lot of that explained the kind of, the technical ins and outs of what's happening in the ADHD brain. And while I think I understand the basics, it's still very complicated to me, and I find that stuff hard to take in as it is. So I'm still learning, I'm still experiencing, I'm still trying to get over my struggles with motivation, focus, and my relationship with food, which is definitely connected to ADHD. And I'm trying to get the hang of work all over again, because now my employer are aware that I have ADHD, and we're making reasonable adjustments, which is an experience for us, because those things always start with, what do you need? And I'm like, I don't know. So we're working through that, which is really helpful, to be fair. They're very understanding, and I could not have asked for better from my boss. I am on the waiting list to trial medication, which is something that I am unsure about, because medication scares me. And also I don't like the idea in my head of relying on medication. And I have this thing stuck in my head, which is that I've coped this long. Can I find ways to just adjust everything else to suit my needs so that I can avoid this medication? Because a big thing that I've heard is that ADHD medication, one, is it a great shortage, but also that it can really mess with you, and in particular it can mess with your gut health, which, oh my God, I have worked really hard to improve my gut health after many years of crippling IBS, which could also, and probably is also, linked to my ADHD. Neurodiversity is very strongly connected to IBS, all that stuff, because of dysregulated relationships with food and eating, and signals about when to eat, how much to eat, when to stop eating, all that sort of stuff. So the fact that I've worked so hard and actually achieved improving my gut health whilst not being aware that I had ADHD is a big thing, and I don't want to lose that. So yeah, I'll wait until I get the referral. I'll have the discussion about what the medications are and what they can actually do, and then I'll make that decision whether I want to go through the titration period or not. And I guess as long as they can say to me, you can trial them and they won't have a long-term impact on the rest of your health from a trial if you chose to stop, for example. If they can tell me that, then I'll trial it and I'll see how it actually goes. And to be fair, if it really brings a clarity to my life, the way I experience life that I've never had, and that I can't let that go, then, maybe medication could be the way. Who knows? I'm not going to completely say no, but I need more information before I truly make a decision to definitely do that. So on that note, I'm going to leave this video there and just say that, yeah, for anyone who has actually watched this was cathartic for me, and I'm not going to do much editing to this, if at all. It's just going to be this big old ramble from me. And you know what? That's what vlogs used to be all about for me. They were little rambles, or they were like kind of a documentary of a day or a week or something like that. And I love to look back on them. And even all the videos with my ex, they're not online, but I still have them. And occasionally I do still watch a lot of them, to be fair, because I'm not like sensitive to seeing my ex in a video or something that we did, because we had some good times. It's a humongous kind of a documenting of little chunks and little snippets of my life through a period of life that's so incredibly pivotal when you are becoming a grown-up, you're becoming an adult, and you're having all these major experiences that, actually stick in your memory because you're old enough to remember things in a bit more clarity. And having the documenting of them helps, because then it does improve the memory that I have of them. If you look back through my channel, you'll see there's lots of videos with my now husband Ryan, as we were getting to know each other as well, and I continued vlogging a little bit, and I do sort of miss that. So maybe I will get back to a bit of that at some point, but at the minute I'm just kind of doing my best, doing what I want to do. Occasionally I'm going to do a bit of a ramble on here, because you know what, I like it and it makes me feel actually quite good. Thank you so much for watching, if you did watch this. If there's anything in here that was like of interest or helpful, or you want to ask me about anything such as like the right to choose, or the organization that I use to get diagnosed for ADHD, anything like that, just like drop me a message, go in the comments. My Instagram is Falcore Insta. I don't use social media as much as I used to, but Instagram is the one that I do use because it's the only one that I can find the motivation to do. But I'm like here to chat. That's what I like about the internet. It's the one thing about the internet and about social media that's always been nice to me, is that you get to connect with people from all over the world, and I really love that. And I would never want to lose that, hopefully. But for me, it's all about, you know, the good things, and life is good. I've got a lot more of it ahead of me, and let's just see where this goes. So on that note, I will say thank you so much for watching. Okay, I love you. Goodbye.